So this week we're learning about the Hornets Nest of South Carolina, and I just want to say that as a New Englander, proud Patriots fan, it's been exciting for me to see how the two worlds combined. In New England, we mostly focus on the early stages of the American Revolution, and I think that that's a regional thing, just because we have the Freedom Trail in Boston, all the museums, the historic homes. There's most focus on those early stages where the war was up in New England. A lot less focus about the South Carolina. So this is really new for me, and I was really surprised to learn that a third of the battles took place in South Carolina in the American Revolution. The Hornets Nest was a great video because it was a visual aid for me. I'm not necessarily strong with military war history, so the graphics that showed how Greene split his army and the frontier maps, that really helped me to just visualize what was going on with the readings. I loved how it highlighted personalities and showed us the backstory of people like Horatio Gates. He's the first example of meritocracy. Cornwallis, about how his wife had died and he was really turning towards his work to avoid the grieving process. Nathaniel Greene, Daniel Morgan, and I also liked how it showed the brutality faced by the average citizens in the frontier. So the focus of the Hornet's Nest is this growing tension in the backcountry from years of immigration, just waiting to be stirred, waiting for a war to bring all these tensions to the surface. Another thing that highlights is that the British moved south hoping to find strong loyalist support, but it really backfires. The brutality under General Tarleton, example by the Waxhaws Massacre, and delivering an ultimatum really put the last nail in the coffin for the British strategy. They really didn't learn their lessons from, for example, from New Jersey, how they issued an ultimatum to the colonists. And it really talked about how the country that is, the side that's invading is really going to be running uphill with rebellion propaganda. Also talked about how Greene splits his armies and how the American armies, they're lighter, so they move faster and they draw British further into the frontier, avoiding a decisive battle because the British aren't really familiar with the area. The book South Carolina and the American Revolution, it's a detailed account analysis of the battles. It's really neat to see how it moves chronologically, shows maps of where the troops are situated. That was really beneficial for me. I'm a really visual learner, so that was great. And Gordon argues that the American cause owes its success to what happened in South Carolina. It's really it's a comparative book to the one that we read last week. So the two battles that I particularly was interested in were not necessarily major ones, but the implications that the battles had I found really interesting. So the first one was Hanging Rock, and that's on August 1st and 6th of 1780. First of all, Andrew Jackson, he is the future general and president, and he's there. He's only 13, but he's working as a scout and as a message sender. Second thing was that two partisan leaders, Sumter and Davie, even though they're competitive with one another, they come together in this battle. Now, the attack was not successful. They didn't take Hanging Rock, but two important results came as a result. First, Sumter, he represents the rise of backcountry leadership to the war effort. So through him, we really start to see these frontier leaders come into the forefront. Second, it strengthened intercolonial resolve. So there were rumors spreading around that Congress would give South Carolina and Georgia to the British in exchange for peace. Since these northern states no longer had to experience the war, this seemed a little bit tempting. But the states did not abandon South Carolina, and they passed a pledge to fight back to win all the territory, and they created a second American army for the South. This Southern army was led by Horatio Gates. A little controversy there with General Washington that we see in the video, but the Army consisted of troops from numerous states, including Maryland and Delaware, really showing how the American Revolution brought together these 13 different colonies. The second battle I found was interesting was King's Mountain, and that took place on October 7th, 1780. It showed an encirclement strategy, so they encircled the British camp, or British, and 7 Patriot leaders had to cooperate. They had troops from 3 different states. So we had Shelby and Sevier from Tennessee, Campbell from Virginia, McDowell, Cleveland, and Winston from North Carolina. And I really enjoyed seeing how the different state colonies really worked together for this. Second thing was that the war cry that they yelled later became the Civil War rebel call. And third, the reason I say it was a British troops was because it was really a battle between Americans. The General Ferguson of the British Army, he's the only British soldier that was actually present at this battle. In an hour, 311 loyalists were killed and 600 were captured. Many were tried and executed. This really defeats the British strategy of trying to garner the loyalist support from the southern backcountry, and it also drew more men to fight for the rebellion cause. Again, it's a way of propaganda and a way of inciting these rebels in the backcountry to stand up and fight against the British. Thank you.